mass shooting that has occurred. Happened 10 o'clock local time in Las Vegas last night, and we've learned in the hours subsequent that more than 50 people were killed. This is a live shot that we just showed you of the diplomatic reception room at the White House.
All right, we had this question about whether it's one window or two windows that were actually shot out at the Mandalay Bay Resort. Pete Williams has a little more on that. And Pete, just a warning, I may interrupt you if the president shows up.
Understood, Matt. So you can see clearly one window, and then around the bend in the hotel, a second one that were blown out. And the question is why? And what we're told by law enforcement authorities, their initial assessment is that he had, in essence, a couple of rooms. I'm not sure whether it's a suite that had more than one room or he got connecting rooms, but the point is they say he had access to more than one room, and they believe that he was firing out of both rooms. Why? They don't know that, of course. The supposition is that after shooting out of one, perhaps he thought that the authorities might try to return fire to that room, and so then he decided to fire out of a second one. But the belief is, and I think perhaps the subsequent checking of the smoke detectors in the room and other cameras will give a better answer. But at this point, they believe that he was firing out of both those windows that you see blown out, one and then the other, and possibly running back and forth between the two. He certainly had enough firepower in there to station them at both windows. But again, no answer here on why. ISIS has claimed responsibility, saying that the suspect, whom they don't name in their claim, Stephen Paddock, had recently converted to Islam. But that, I have to emphasize, is strictly an ISIS claim. Nobody that I've talked to, no U.S. law enforcement authorities have any information to indicate that that is true. His family has said that he was familiar with Las Vegas, liked to gamble, and we've been told by law enforcement authorities that he was spent a fair amount of money gambling, and that may explain why he had connecting rooms or a large room, because as you know, it's a sort of a standard procedure that if you check into a Las Vegas hotel and you're known to have spent a lot of money there, they call them high rollers, they will upgrade you to a better room in the hopes that you'll stay and spend a lot of money in their casinos. Yeah. So no idea what the motive is, but it does appear that he was firing out of both those windows according to the initial assessment. Okay, Pete, thank you for that information. Sean Henry remains with us again. Same warning to you. If the president shows up, I'll cut you off. But I look at that Joe Fryer shot where he's shooting out of his window down at the concert area below. That's a long way away. And that just shows the power of this weapon, and what it can do.
Those military weapons can travel 1,000 yards, those rounds. And when you think about the vantage point that a shooter had down into an open area where essentially you've got people penned in because you've got barriers that are preventing people from getting into the concert like you would expect, but also potentially preventing people from getting out.
You're shooting at a space at that point as opposed to an individual.
It appears that it's indiscriminate, not shooting at anybody individually. When you hear those rounds, that soundtrack, it's full automatic. Just pop, 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 one after the other, likely hundreds of rounds shot over the course of this time.
And we had somebody on not long ago who talked about the sound of the bullets getting very close, then going away, and then getting very close again, which you can almost imagine the guy taking the rifle and spraying it back and forth.
And just spraying it indiscriminately, trying to cause as much mass carnage as possible, and certainly that was accomplished.
And real quick, I mean, we have no idea what motivated this gunman, but for ISIS's media unit to say he was a soldier of the Islamic State, I presume you take that with a bit of a grain.
I think that's true. I don't know if that's an officially monitored ISIS channel or if it's somebody claiming to be ISIS or not. Obviously, when we see these things, I always defer or immediately revert that this is terrorism, and then we move back from there. It's unclear here. We don't have enough information. There's a lot of investigation to do, looking at who this guy was, who was he communicating with, what did they find in the course of these search warrants that will indicate what his motivation was.
And the other thing is that we're going to have to find out where he was able to get that kind of a weapon. You're not supposed to be able to buy that as a civilian, where you're on full auto in military rounds that are being fired. And incidentally, this is going to change our lives once again. You're not going to be able to go into a Las Vegas hotel or many hotels without going through a magnetometer of some kind. They're going to be checking people in ways that they have not in the past. So we're becoming more and more a security state in this country as a result of these kinds of episodes. And it is, as I've been saying this morning, a terrible commentary on where we are and the absence really of a civil discussion about it, about how we arrive at it. Everybody goes to their far quarters, the NRA defending the right to own guns, people who want to eliminate all guns. We've got to find a way to talk about this in a reasonable fashion. And I would hope the president this morning would begin that discussion in a way that we can move forward together, because this is something that ought not to divide us. This is something that should unite us in some fashion.
Well, that's a good point, Tom. You've been in the chair over the course of many years and over the course of many national tragedies like the one we're watching play out right now. And you've seen presidents in the past try to put things in perspective, to be the healer in chief and then also talk about the substance of the attack. Well, how can he do that? How can he thread that needle?
Well, we'll see. I mean, it's his instinct is to push back and to fight, to stir things up. I mean, that's not a political commentary. That's an objective kind of analysis of how he has conducted himself as president. He's always kind of dukes up, and all of his tweets have been in that fashion as well. The most recent one, obviously, in which he said, using a phrase that I found stunning, take those SOBs off the field and fire them, talking about NFL players who are some of our biggest sports heroes who decided to take a knee, rightly or wrongly. But instead of saying, look, this is a discussion that we ought to have in this country, I don't agree with those players, but at the same time, we have to decide what's in the best interest of all of us, and I invite them to join us in that debate. I'd like to be a part of it as well. It's that tone that we'll probably need. You look back at President Reagan, for example, and the Challenger explosion, how he healed the country in which we appeared. The President of the United States becomes the father of the country, like him or not politically. The President of the United States has that role. It's the most important office that we have in the land. They should be a symbol of how we can get together as a country and move forward to a higher plane and not constantly be down in the gutter with these kind of fights that go on across the political spectrum. There are people who are critical of them who go way too far as well. The time is over for that, frankly.
Well, we await the president's remarks. He's expected to address the nation at any moment from the diplomatic reception room at the White House. And certainly there is a need in this country this morning to hear healing words, because we've suffered a great tragedy. It is a shocking one as well. 50 people killed watching a concert in Las Vegas, and a shooter on the 32nd floor of a hotel trying to inflict as much damage as possible.
Yeah, we're waking up this morning, and when we first came on the air, the death toll, we were told, was 2. And then it grew to 20, and now it stands at 50, with many other lives in the balance based on the surgeries they are facing and the recoveries they are facing. So this has grown throughout the scope of the last 6-7 hours to just something unimaginable. And yet, even as we say that, we feel like we've probably said that far too many times in the past.
And we are, of course, so curious and needing to know what possibly could have motivated this shooter. Reporters who've been in touch with his family members talk about their shock, them saying that they are just at a loss. They're not sure. One of them said it was like an asteroid hit them. That's how shocking it was as a revelation that this person is the one that police say conducted the most deadly shooting on U.S. soil in history. So we'll start to see what possibly motivated. I mean, there's always a chance you never find out, Sean, but I mean, I think investigators now are descending upon this retirement community that he lived in about an hour outside of Vegas. He seems to be a man of some means. He apparently owned 2 aircraft, had a cache of weapons. Those don't come cheap. Was able to check into a hotel. So they'll start to put these pieces together.
And it's hard to imagine this could be worse. However, if you really stop and listen to what we now know, the fact that he had those 10 weapons in that room, he apparently had an awful lot of ammunition. You go back and you look at the quick work that was done by the Las Vegas Police Department and Sheriff's Department, and how they got that SWAT team up to the 32nd floor of that hotel, and calmly, as we heard in that audio recording, calmly and yet efficiently took down this door, perhaps anticipating that. This gunman took his own life, but had this not ended when it ended, there's no telling how many more people who were just simply helpless there on the ground of that concert venue, how many more might have been killed.
When you think about the training that law enforcement officers have had, based on all of these mass attacks that we've seen over the last several years. They are very calm. They just move into action. You play the way you train, and these law enforcement agencies are training regularly. The police department with the sheriff's department, with the FBI, they're all working together in a collaborative way. In many ways, many cases, they have the same similar communications channels so they can coordinate across agencies. It's an unfortunate time for us, but because of these many tragic events that we've seen over the past few years, they've become much better at responding and being able to identify and mitigate the threat.
As we mentioned, the president will speak shortly. We are waiting for that, just as you are. Tom Costello, though, is standing by with some extra information for us. Tom?
Well, I'll tell you, it's in the context of mass shootings, and there was another one yesterday that is not even getting any attention. It was in Lawrence, Kansas, and that in that particular case we had, I believe it was 3 people dead and 2 injured. It depends on whose numbers you use, and everybody is accused of having a political agenda or not, but by one count, 460 people have died so far this year in mass casualty shootings. So what is exactly the case with Mr. Paddock? We simply don't know. We would also underscore the fact that we have absolutely no evidence from any official source that he had any connections to Islamic terrorism. That said, the media arm of ISIS has come out and claimed responsibility, claiming that this man converted recently. Again, nobody in any official capacity in the United States government has any evidence to substantiate that. And as always in these types of cases, there are so many theories on the internet, and the vast majority of them are simply not plausible. But that is the very definition of fake news these days. So what we try to do is determine what exactly are the confirmable facts and go along as we can with that. But there is no shortage of theories out there right now on the web.
And what